Thank you so much, Daryl, for being on board today. As always, again, it's a jam-packed session. So today we're going to be looking at, obviously, and focusing on the digital technologies curriculum. We're going to be looking at, first of all, stamping out some misconceptions that we have. And one of the most common ones is with teachers, knowing the difference between ICT and the digital technologies curriculum. Then we're going to help you make sense of the curriculum by diving into the 3 ways of thinking and showing you how that understanding is vital for you when you might even swap year levels or understand the curriculum that's targeted at your year level. Then I've got some documents for you to help you if you're not using the Australian curriculum. I'm pretty sure we've got a couple of people from different states around Australia. Welcome as well. And then we're going to dive in and show you lots of different resources that we have available for you as well. Come to the very end of it, there is always question time, and if you'd like to pose a question for either myself or Daryl, then please just pop in a little bit that says Catherine or Daryl at the beginning, especially if you want one of those questions specifically answered by myself or Daryl. So if you're watching this not as a live recording, you can find all the information and all the resources that we are going to talk about throughout this session by joining the ICT educator community. It is a freebie, just here with the link just there. We've got a special forum that is going to be dedicated for webinar number 4. And as I said, it's going to have all the resources and even the slideshow available for you afterwards as well. So Daryl, can you tell us a little bit about the difference between ICT and the digital technologies curriculum?
Thanks, Catherine. Thanks for your lovely introduction. As you mentioned, my name's Daryl English. I am a teacher of, actually an assistant principal, and I work at a school that's very much dedicated to 21st century learning in the west of Melbourne. I have a slide to progress through. I've got a couple of slides here, pictures there. One is the digital technologies key concepts on the left-hand side, and the other one is the ICT capabilities. I'd like to start with a little bit of provocation as you're looking at this slide. One graphic, as I said, has got the key concepts of the Digitech curriculum. The other graphic has the ICT capabilities on it. We've got 2 separate entities there. Why? Why wouldn't we bundle them all into the one big mob called ICT or something? Have a think about that. Enough time. Okay, we've now got to have a little delve into the digital technologies. And I guess one of the key differences between the 2 is that the digital technologies has an overarching idea, and that overarching idea is to create preferred futures. That's why it's so important. We're getting kids to have a think about what it is they can do to make a difference using digital technologies, and whether those technologies come from the ICT, whether those technologies come from GRAS, whether those technologies come from talking to people. The idea behind the whole thing is to create a preferred future. So it's a very exciting curriculum area to be involved in. It's not just banging away on a keyboard producing Word documents. Catherine's going to be talking a bit further about this in a few moments, but the other really key section about the digital technologies is there are 3 key thinking skills that are most important. And we've got those as the computational thinking, we've got design thinking, and we've also got systems thinking. Now, if we have a look at that key concepts chart on the left-hand side, you'll see that a lot of those key concepts come directly from the idea of those thinking skills. So if we look at, for instance, abstraction, we might look at algorithmics, might look at those 2 and see that they actually come directly from whole notion of computation thinking. ICT, on the other hand, can be a little bit different. And the question about this is a really great quote by Dr. Rebecca Vivian. And I'll let you read that. And it's a crucial difference. It's about making, creating, rather than using and consuming. Sure, if you make a really cool game, use it by all means. But the key idea is to use your imagination, use a need, and actually create something that's useful. To outline this in a little more detail, I showed my staff last year a terrific video, and I didn't pop it in the room, but it's very easy to pick up on. If you search Intel, as in the computer chip making, and a better world, you'll see a whole range of videos that Intel made, all about problems that people solved by using the digital technologies approach. And one in particular that really struck me was about a young woman in Kenya whose uncle had liver failure. And the only way you can get livers in some of these countries, or donor, is to go onto the black market. And she was relating the story that in fact she had been approached to donate one of her kidneys and pop it onto the black market and earn money that way. So she got to think, how can I create a solution to this problem? And so what she did is she made an app, and she coded that app, and pretty soon she had an app that would actually link donors with the recipients. So that she might have used ICT in all of the work that she did, but in the end, the approach she used, that is having a problem, determining an output, doing the research, finding all that information, was a Digitech approach. Here's a little activity that is actually within one of the resource folders. These cards, I'm showing you the front of the cards as a real the answers away, but all of these cards pick up on key concepts and ICT capabilities. So you'll see we've got data representation, data collection, we've got presentation, we've got abstraction, and then we've got a whole range of other skills around there. There's a question I'd like to ask you while I'm talking about this and you're looking at those. There's one of those cards that actually contained within the two areas, digital technologies and ICT. I wonder if you can have a think about and figure out which one it might be. Okay, I won't keep you in suspense. It's actually cyber safety. Typing is an ICT capability. Using presentation tools, ICT capability. Word processing, ICT capability. Managing of files, email, print are all ICT capabilities. When we talk about Digitech curriculum, we're really talking about algorithms, we're talking about computational thinking, we're talking about abstraction, we're talking about all those sort of things like coding and robotics that really take us to the next level. Okay, the first question was around about, well, why wouldn't we put all this in the one subject or the one area? Well, the fact is it's too big. It's huge. It's an enormous area to try and cover for a teacher, a professional within a school. So, within a few of the different sectors, we've had a different approach. Within the Victorian curriculum, ICT, those capabilities that I was talking about, ICT as printing, email, cyber safety, is expected to be taught as part of the subject area. So if you're a mathematics teacher and you're teaching mathematics, or even if you're a classroom teacher in a P6 environment, and you're teaching mathematics, in the teaching of your mathematics, you would be expected to cover ICT within that. And that could be things like collection of data and putting that data into a spreadsheet. If you're an English teacher, then quite clearly you would be expected to teach word processing, editing skills. If you're a geography teacher or a humanities teacher, you would potentially be looking to try and use geographical skills, location skills, geo-mapping, all sorts of things like that. And they're supposed to be taught in your subject area. We have a little idea here that we might want to ask you. If it's the case that you are expected as a teacher to teach ICT, how are you going with that? If you're not a Digitech teacher, if you're not just a classroom teacher, and you're a classroom teacher that's teaching English, how confident are you of being able to handle the ICT capabilities? So we've got a multiple choice question that we're going to pop into the screen. And we wanted to understand, the question is, how are you going with understanding the difference between ICT and the digital technologies curriculum? I'll give you a few seconds to answer that. Within the New South Wales K-10 curriculum, ICT is integrated. So a similar approach to using ICT in New South Wales. And Catherine's going to talk a little bit further about other states in a little while, and she's going to give some good ideas and resources to approach that one. But it's really important to have a look there. Students in English in New South Wales have the opportunity to become competent, discriminative and creative users of ICT. Students will learn about the ethics of information communication through technology. I wonder how many of your colleagues, in particular if you're in the secondary community, how many of your colleagues are actually covering that ethical use of technology. We've got another poll there. How do you think your colleagues are actually tackling that? How do they see their role as a teacher of ICT, no matter what subject they're teaching? And hopefully later on we'll be able to discuss the results of that. I'm just going to hand you back to Catherine.
Thanks so much, Daryl, and that was a really inspiring chat about the difference between the digital technologies curriculum and the ICT. One thing that caught my attention was talking about the videos and how that woman created an app for a purpose. And it's an area that I always try and look for what's happening in society and what are those real life experiences and people and how they've solved problems and how they've used digital technologies. It always gives me that warm fuzzy feeling about how we're utilising technology for the mankind and for the good of mankind as well. So sometimes it can be quite difficult to make sense of the curriculum, especially when this is completely new area to majority of teachers out there. And so first of all, don't stress. We're certainly here to help you and support you with your journey and development of the digital technologies curriculum. So the first topic of conversation to help you unpack and understand the curriculum is, as I said before, we were going to talk about the 3 ways of thinking. Now, if you look at the 3 ways of thinking as the concepts that are part of the digital technologies curriculum, it will then help you understand and also whether if you're doing an ICT part of it, does it fit into those 3 ways of thinking? If it doesn't, then it's most likely not the digital technologies curriculum, and that's okay. But also if you've got teachers that aren't too aware of this, as soon as you start to understand the 3 ways of thinking, you then can understand what your particular year level and those content descriptions are actually asking you to do. Now, I do know with the New South Wales syllabus, you have 4 ways of thinking, but obviously the 4th way is the science thinking, and we're not really going into that today. So don't think I haven't forgotten about you guys if you're tuning in from New South Wales, because I do know what you're going through. So the first one that I want to talk about is systems thinking. And when we're looking at systems thinking, it's all about understanding how a system actually works and how each of those components kind of fit together to create that big system. So I always think of a system just a bicycle. So if you think about all the different components that you would put in together to make that system, and I always like to ask the question to the students is what happens if we didn't have a bicycle seat? That would be a very, very uncomfortable journey that they would go on. So Systems thinking then, again, it kind of relates back to that hardware and software that you might be using and investigating through the curriculum. The next one that we have is design thinking, and this one here is a little personal favourite of me because it always comes back to thinking about that idea and why that idea is important for you as well. And so you're looking at all the different parts and thinking about the design thinking side of the curriculum. And then I really like the idea is that we're getting students to generate new ideas and we're making them understand why something is needed, especially again if we look at that global experience that we can provide our students. Imagine them coming up with a world of possibilities because of technology as well. And it really, for me, it's always been something that I'm always certainly passionate about and providing students because it really does promote that teamwork, critical thinking and creative thinking, and gives the students to really think about what they're thinking about something as well, which is always just, as I said, it's always one of my favourites because we almost give that opportunity to let our students think again. The next one then is computational thinking, and for me personally, when I was unpacking the curriculum many years ago, it was always one of those areas that I always had trouble grasping. And so if you think of computational thinking as a problem-solving method that we use then to solve problems, whether it's in our own life or whether it's then the way that a computer might solve a problem as well, that's then the overarching idea of computational thinking. Then computational thinking is then broken down into the 4 areas of algorithms, abstraction, decomposition, and pattern recognition. So I'm going to talk about each of these 4 areas. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk about the analogy of completing a puzzle, because I found that when I was relating to the computational thinking and all these different ways, I was actually doing a puzzle at the time, and that's when it helped me get an understanding of what all of these four thinking and these 4 styles actually meant for me. So when we're looking at algorithms, we're looking at a set of explicit step-by-step instructions. And the way that we can present these step-by-step instructions is either through written instructions or through flowcharts, or if you're at that 3 to 4 or 5 to 6 curriculum area, then it becomes that visual programming, the word programming and the block coding that we can get from scratch. So I want you now to think about algorithms and what steps do you use when you open up that the cardboard box of the puzzle, and what do you start thinking about to be able to put that puzzle together. One activity that I think would actually be really good for a staff if you were running any staff meeting is to actually put a puzzle in the centre of the table and get the teachers to actually talk about the different types of strategies that they use to be able then to complete the puzzle. So then the next one then is abstraction. And this is where we only focus on certain parts and then ignore the rest of that information coming in. So I don't know about you, but when I first start a puzzle, the first thing I do is I start to look for the border pieces. So when I'm looking for the border pieces, I've only got my eye on the pieces that somehow have a straight edge, a straight line on it. And then when it's even a bit of a bonus is when they've got the 2 straight edges on it as well. Somehow I can manage between and find these pieces within 1,000 pieces. Why is that? Is because I'm only focusing on the condition that I've given myself is to find those border pieces. And isn't it amazing how quickly we find them as well? It's almost like when you start looking for a new car or you've got your eye on a particular model and then all of a sudden you see these cars all the time on the roads. It's not because all of a sudden there's more cars on the road. It means that you're honing in and focusing on that particular model or the car, the colour of the car as well. The next one then what we have is decomposition. And so that means about taking one big problem and then managing it into smaller bite-sized pieces. So again, when you're completing that puzzle, you're not going to try and pick up a piece and put it where it goes. What we then start to do is we might have different areas of the puzzle that we'll start to complete, just like we found those border pieces from before, we'll then put those pieces together, and that bit creates almost our section. And I know when I'm doing a puzzle, I might focus on a particular section at a time. I don't keep referring back to the big part of the picture that is the puzzle. I almost, just hone in on little bits at a time and break it down into smaller parts. And then when I've done that smaller part, I then move on to another smaller part. The next one we have is pattern recognition, and this is where we look for patterns and similarities to help us solve those problems more efficiently. So when we're also looking for those pieces of puzzle, just like before, we were honing in and looking for that pattern on that piece of puzzle. That was the physical pattern that we needed to find. We wanted to find that straight border. Another one is, do you ever kind of start these conversations between people when you are doing a puzzle that you're looking for the bit that's got that pink on it? Or you might be looking for the fuzzy green side of it. I find it really interesting how we all of a sudden create our own language when we're trying to do a puzzle as well. That's what we're looking for when it comes to pattern recognition, is that we're trying to work out, what parts go where based on something that we can see that's reoccurring as well. I had to do a puzzle that was all different coloured doors at one stage, and the pattern recognition certainly helped me to find those pink doors or the red doors as well. And then I also knew where they were going to go as well. Do you ever get some of those pieces and you put them in that spot where you think it might go as well? So the next thing then that I want to talk about is understanding that there are other states across Australia that use different curriculum to the Australian curriculum. And when I was teaching, one of the things that I found is that when teachers that I have been experienced with were using the Victorian curriculum, and many teachers in this space who are already overwhelmed, whenever they see a lesson plan that is marked against another curriculum, they almost push it to the side and then they say, but that's marked, say, to the Australian curriculum, I'm using the Victorian curriculum and I can't use that activity. That's actually quite wrong. So one of the resources that I've provided for teachers is this worksheet here, and this is for the Foundation to 2, but you can see in the green, you may not be able to read the Australian curriculum, but you can see that there's the green. That's the Australian curriculum, and the red on the page is the Victorian curriculum. It means then that if you find an activity that is marked against the Australian curriculum, look straight across and you can see how it aligns to your curriculum. I'm a big believer in one pages, so even though the writing at the moment might be a little bit small for you, but it's all there for you on one page of writing for you to easily to navigate. So the Victorian curriculum, I've done this across from Foundation to Year 10. Then if you are a Western Australian teacher, don't worry, I've done it for you as well. So here you can see the Australian curriculum again is in the green, and if you're a Year 3 teacher, I've put that curriculum for you next to it, and you can see that that is blue for you. Again, it's a nice one easy page document, and you can see on the other side is the assessment standards that you might have or outcomes that is also side by side. It will also allow you, especially if you're in New South Wales, this is the year level 5 and 6, and then on the purple for New South Wales, that's stage 3. And I know that there is quite a big difference between the wording that we find in the Australian curriculum and the New South Wales syllabus, but what we're actually asking is really, really similar. I think a really great activity to do for your staff is to actually provide them with one of these pages and get them to look at the similarities between what they already have between the Australian curriculum and the curricula that you use within your school. That way then they can actually see and start to identify that the language is really, really similar. And really when they're looking or they might find a particular code, they can match it up quite easily with their own curriculum. And it also means then that if they're looking for a particular activity, to then find it and do some searching using the Australian, the code that we have at the end of it as well. Hopefully that will give you some confidence to be able to broaden your search when you're looking for activities to help you teach that Digitech side as well. Now, just before I go on, now with the New South Wales syllabus, I do understand that it's a science and technology. So just to help you a little bit further, these particular documents, I've kind of gotten rid of the science part of it, just because I wanted to focus only on digital technologies. Now, when I was doing the science and technology syllabus and comparing it to the Australian one, there were some times where I was questioning where it should actually go and which box it should actually belong to. So even that would be a really great conversation that you might have with your staff as well. And go, is this actually comparing and in the right spot? And it got to the stage where I was almost going back and forth, and each day that I would look at these documents, I'd change my mind, but I'm like, I had to just make a decision and go with it. So even that would be a really great conversation starter for you to have with your staff, talking about, is this alignment actually correct as well? I'd really love your input on that one too. Now, one thing that I found when I have been talking to teachers is how much they've struggled with the actual language that is within this curriculum. And I know that it's a brand new curriculum, and sometimes the language and these new concepts kind of sound a little bit ambiguous. And so I went back to my old school, and I was working with one of a teacher who I used to work with, who had gone from grade 1-2 to 3-4. And something that she said to me was, she didn't even understand what peripheral devices were. And so I said to her, I'm like, wouldn't it be great if we just had a quick 2-page document that provided you with that information to help you unpack it? And I said to her, is this a type of resource that you would find valuable? And so this was actually the very first one that we created out of this whole series. And it actually goes through peripheral devices. It gives you a quick outline of what they are. And you can see on the landscape page that there's a little image down the bottom. That's actually a link to a YouTube video. So if you need a little bit more information and a bit more knowledge around this area, then that's a perfect video for you as well. What I wanted to do was take that research side out for you and give you that information for you. And you can see on the other side, you can tell that I'm a primary school teacher, can't you? Because I absolutely love making infographics and putting a little bit of creative spin on things. So you can see there that that's actually all the information that we have within that written document on the left-hand side is now become an infographic for you. So that's what the one for year 3-4 looks like for a peripheral device. Rest assured, this has been done for the whole entire curriculum. If you're not really too confident to understand what algorithms is like for a foundation to 2, we've got it in there for you. What online collaboration is and those protocols that it talks about at that 3, 4 and 5, 6 level, I've completely unpacked that for you as well. They are all available. Remember at the beginning of the webinar, I talked about the ICT community of practice. That's where you'll find all of this information. And to help you out a little bit further, I've actually put the codes of all the states as a description for you too, just to help you unpack that information and to help you find it in a place where you can find it. It's all categorized by year level. So the next one then, we had so much success with all of these when I was talking with teachers, that the next one came about, and the issue that they had was, well, where can we find this information for our students? And I was like, well, if I can do this for our teachers, I can certainly help you out for our students. So what I've started to slowly do is help our students understand these concepts as well. But what I've also done is made sure that I understand their reading comprehension level and taken that on board when I've written these as well. So you can see on the page here that this would be information for students. It takes that same process in the same format that I use for teachers, but it doesn't obviously give you curriculum expectation links and things like that. What it does is, again, the image down below is another video that they can go and watch if they need some extra information about what binary code means. But when I spoke about binary code, I really thought about students that are in a grade 5, 6 level. And what I ended up doing was comparing it to how they learn a language in school to now how binary code is like a language for computers and digital systems. When I was test writing this, would you believe I had 50 students in front of me and they understood all of this information? And I thought for me, very naively as well, is that Google Images will be able to provide me an image that would have the alphabet in capital letters and lowercase that would be easy for the students to be able to read. No, couldn't find it. And so again, I had 50 students in front of me and we were trying to madly find an image that would be big enough to put in the classroom, and we couldn't find it easily. And I know that teachers, being time poor is one of the things that we all struggle with as educators. So I wanted to create these for you that would reduce that time planning and reduce that time for you to find those targeted resources for you when you are unpacking the curriculum. And so you can see one of those posters that I wanted to make for our students was the binary code and comparing the lowercase to the capital letters. It's there, it's nice and big. You can also blow the infographics up to an A3 size paper. You've got a great resource to put in your classrooms. So you can see here now with the collection of resources that we have for teachers and students. As I said before, I've gone through the whole entire curriculum and found those for you. So the two that I gave you the examples of today were peripheral devices and binary code. You can see that a lot of information, especially for the student-focused resources, has been quite heavily on the 5-6 area. Please contact me if you need anything else within the Foundation to 2. Just because it isn't there doesn't mean I can't create it for you. I tend to create the student-focused information sheets on a need basis, because rather than just creating it for the sake of it, I want to create it for a need and also make sure that I test drive them into schools before we put them on the website as well. So we actually know that if it has been written at a 3-4 level, do our grade 3s actually, when they're reading it, understand what they're reading as well? So there is a little bit of to and fro going back, but also be aware that every single one of these resources on this page has been test driven by a teacher before it's gone available for you as well. And it's also free too. So the next part we're going to have a chat about now is looking at all the different types of resources that we have available. So Daryl, what are some of the resources that has always been your little go-to place to go to help teachers teach the digital technologies curriculum? Well, all right. I think we've lost Daryl at the moment.
Thank you, Catherine. That was terrific. I got a lot out of that. I knew a bit about the Australian digital technologies curriculum. Am I back?
Yep, you're back. Yes, I can hear you.
I think beautiful. Am I coming through?
Yes, you are coming through. There we go. That's what we want to see.
I'm back. All right. Okay. It's terrific. Thank you. No, I was just saying. I just mentioned that I learned a great deal about what I thought I knew about from you. So thank you very much for that. Just to recap the questions that were asked very quickly about the difference between ICT and Digitech. We've got results back. First question I asked was about how you felt about your own understanding of ICT versus Digitechnology. And a lot of people, 20% of you agreed that, in fact, you knew you had very strong knowledge of the differences between the ICT and digital technology. So that's very heartening. And in fact, most people are either have an understanding of it, a developing understanding, or have very strong understanding of it. On the other hand, your opinion of the colleagues was a little less emphatic. They felt that your colleagues, in fact, none of your colleagues had a very strong understanding of the difference between ICT and the digital technologies. Well, perhaps what can happen is you could potentially use some of these fantastic resources for your staff. And one that is my go-to place is the Digital Technologies Hub. This is the group, Educational Services Australia, produced this site. only deals with digital technologies. It's got some fantastic resources for you. Very, very good webinars and slow-paced videos. In fact, it's slow videos that really pull a lot of concepts around digital technologies into focus for you. A fabulous resource, brilliant resources about implementing across your school. It's got a section for leaders, a teachers, a section for parents. But what I do that I think is absolutely brilliant is their sample, scope, and sequences. They are fantastic. If you wanted to know where to begin in the F2 area, and maybe at your school, your F2 is all treated as one group, well, what do I do in prep? What do I cover in prep? What then do I cover in grade 1 that doesn't repeat what I did in prep? And then what might I cover in grade 2 that will build on that knowledge from prep in grade 1? So it's actually, their sample, scope and sequences is probably the best place to go to if you want some beginning. Another great area is, within that site is, Catherine, we got that one. Okay, so is fantastic area is the Tech for Digital Technologies. Now what this is a whole section on various technologies that teachers across Australia have tried and proven to be effective within their classroom. So if you're worried about, should I buy Spheros, would I be better off buying Bbots, what's the best sort of technology to use, this is a great place to go because it actually will tell you, it doesn't put rubbish on anything, it just says these are the ones we like, these are the ones that work really well. And so it's a great place to go. It's also got how, not so much for primary, but certainly within about grade 5, grade 6, easily, you're talking to the kids about from the visual base to a written base in terms of coding. So if you wanted to explore that, it's got some really good ideas on how you might do that. It's also got some terrific links and ideas about how you might assess your students' understanding of the digital technologies curriculum. Another really good one that I like, or two that I like, is CSER. Now, one of the fantastic areas they offer is they do these brilliant MOOCs, so these massive online courses for teachers, and you can join in, you can get a whole lot out of them, you can drop out, but actually a lot of their written materials are brilliant. Absolutely fabulous to have a look at. Another thing, when they also offer a lending library. Now, it's not in operation currently because of the COVID-19 and they don't want people touching stuff, but if you want a box of equipment, you can actually contact them and say, look, we'd really like a box. Now, one of the teachers that I've spoken to recently, they just got a whole box of fantastic robotics equipment, all the microbits they could ever want in their life, plus quite a few other little bits and pieces, some of the things that join onto the microbits. So they're very, very good. They also have each state has got a representative that you could book into as well. The Australian Computing Academy is also another really great place to go to, and they also offer online challenges that are very good for the students, offer some really good ideas, and they also have some fabulous resources for you to have a look at, PDFs. They have some very good activities that you could do with students as well, so it's a very good one to do. The next couple of resources again are very terrific. This one, CS Unplugged, I can't recommend this enough. If you're worried about equity or your students don't have enough iPads to go around, CS Unplugged has got one of the greatest banks of activities you can do with your students that will build on all those computational thinking skills, all the design thinking skills, all the systems thinking skills, fabulous activities. I know Catherine mentioned before about the binary. There's some brilliant binary cards in there you can use to teach your children about binary numbers and all those sort of things. It's New Zealand based, but it is fantastic. No, I should have said it's New Zealand based and it's fantastic, not but, because it does fit in exceptionally well with our curriculum, that's for sure. I also got this one, the BEBRAS Challenge. That is also another fabulous resource. It's an online set of thinking activities. So they set challenges Each year they run a challenge, and it's incremental. I think it starts from about grade 3 and works its way up. But what's really cool is you can actually have access to previous years. So you don't have to say it's March and you missed out on the start. Well, it doesn't matter because you can actually go back and do previous years. They do flow charts, they do algorithmic thinking, they do a whole lot of fabulous questions, and problems are really quite complex. Very, very difficult questions. I get stumped on the grade 4 one. So anyway, I don't know how the kids do it, but I'm sure you'd have a really big, enjoyable time with your class doing some of those things. So I think in this time there's also been a question for you to answer about what area that you might like help with your resourcing. So back to you, Catherine.
Yeah, thank you so much, Daryl. So I've also been working with teachers over the past 2 years to help create resources that they may not have been able to find in some of the locations that Daryl spoke about before. So ACS is in the process of developing different lessons as well that kind of complements what we find everywhere else and might fill in the gaps where you might not be finding just what you're looking for. And I want to take you through a couple of examples of the types of resources that I've been working and creating with while I'm collaborating with other teachers as well. So one of them was, this one, it was for the Foundation to 2 teachers, and this is about using VBots, and we did some data and representing data as pictures and symbols, and they wanted to explore the type of digital systems that they use when they're wanting to, and it was all about turning lights off and things like that. So the students then collected data about the types of lights that they have and where they have them. And then this little activity here was they had a little Bebot. Now this is a great activity if you don't have a Bebot, but one of them is how could we create a robot that would automatically switch the light off or go and turn the light off. So then the little boxes there on that sheet was a little worksheet that was created by a teacher and one of our schools that we've connected with. And then it's all about how would they get the Bebot, which is down on the left-hand corner, all the way up to the light switch to turn it off. So it was a really great way that they were already doing a sustainable unit of work, but how could we then put the digital technologies curriculum into something that the teachers were already working on? What that meant is that the teachers then found ways to start to incorporate the digital technologies curriculum and started using words like the data representation as symbols and diagrams, and also started using the words of algorithm and sequence of steps with their grade preppies. Next one that we have, and this is one that I absolutely love doing, this was for a 3-4 class, and what they wanted to do was they were already doing a unit of work that was all about keeping them healthy and how to stay healthy. And then we were able to find how digital technologies in society helps us to stay healthy anyway. And I'm sure there's many of you out there that have a Fitbit or an Apple Watch or any other apps or mobile devices that help you, that track your heart rate and track how many steps you've done for the day, maybe even how much water you've drunk for the day too. So we use that as a connection to bring it into a unit of work that the students were already doing. So what they started off the first half of that term really doing the healthy unit that was already planned for the term. Instead of just identifying how to stay healthy, we took it to a next level by the students then creating and designing an app that would help them remain healthy. What I loved about this one is that the students were able to use and come up with their own ideas, and the teachers weren't too prepped or confident yet to use a visual basing program like Scratch. But what we ended up doing was it was all the design process on paper. So you can see the very top photo on the slide is actually a bit of a flow chart and instructions on how a user can navigate the app that this student was creating. Then the photo underneath was actually a photo that they had to think about all the hardware and software that they would need to include to run that app. I was sitting in the classroom when they were creating these ones, and what I found is that the students recognized an area in their life that they wanted to stay healthy or improve their health or fitness with it, and then they applied that to their creating and designing an app. I remember talking to 2 of the students that were in the classroom, and they said they loved this idea because it got them to be able to do some sketching, and they loved sketching. And another student said that he loves using Scratch, but he thought that Scratch Scratch was becoming a little bit babyish, even though he was in grade 3. Not at all. What we were then able to provide for him is a platform and ideas to take Scratch further in ways that he had never done before. They didn't, as I said before, they didn't get to the visual programming side of it, but it wasn't really too much to worry about. It was about the teachers first diving into the digital technologies curriculum and starting to see how they could connect it with areas that they're already teaching in the classroom. The next one, and this one's a bit of a favourite of mine, is that we were doing looking at natural disasters and what happens within natural disasters and what type of digital systems and software and hardware devices that we have that help us through natural disasters. And so they then went on to design or redesign or recreate a digital system that would help with a natural disaster. Now you can see the photo in this one is all about we were able to bring in some robotics. So not sure if you're aware or not, but actually ACS has a bank of these robotics. They're called qubits. And you can see on the poster that we actually created a shake table. And what it has is that you can see that there's 2 layers of the cardboard. And using the robotics, we code it so the very top layer rotates back and forth and simulates an earthquake shake table. What's even better is that we can actually get the students to actually change the severity of the earthquake with a little bit of a dial. So this was an activity that we did in the classroom, and we went from kind of creating a digital system to help with it to then also integrating it into this way where they were redesigning a new structure that would withstand an earthquake. I think this was more of like an introduction into the unit of work. And they just loved it so much, and we tried to get as many layers and as many levels as possible as well. And I think my favourite comment, when we always think that we're trying to see those global connections with our students, and then I think my favourite comment out of all of it was I was chatting to one of the girls and I said, so would you live in a structure like this? And she said to me, yes, because I like marshmallows and spaghetti. We use the marshmallow and spaghettis to actually create the structure. I don't think she understood that the houses in real life wouldn't be made out of spaghetti or marshmallows. So I kind of missed the mark on that one, unfortunately. What I also have provided for teachers as well is that you can see that this is actually an assessment page for you as well. So all the units of work have been test driven by teachers, and it's this little page here that you can see that has on the left-hand side, it's got all the content descriptions. Now, this one's specific for the Australian curriculum. I've done it for the Victorian curriculum, and I'm slowly going through all the other curricula. So you can see the content descriptions are there. The next little one has got what session it's actually targeted in, the type of assessment piece that you're looking for. But this one has been a real joy for teachers to have, is that I've created and written some blanket statements for you to use if you're starting to the need to write reports. These type of statements would also be perfect if you're starting down and going down the track of ongoing assessments. So far, what ACS has available for our primary school students is all of these ones here. And so the 3 that I just showed you today was sustainable users of technology, and I have changed it. It is how to stay healthy, and then the natural disasters as well. There's also a couple of scope and sequences, and I'm in the process of putting together some lunchtime code activities for you as well. So, Daryl, what do you think would be our final thoughts when we're looking at the digital technologies curriculum?
Thanks, Catherine. I've got this slide up at the moment, some final thoughts, and I think this sort of encapsulates really the difference between digital technologies and ICT. If we had spent a long time studying these, and my early career was actually spent with a porta pack very similar to what that woman in the top right has got, slung over her shoulder. In fact, most of these, except for the mobile phones, I've used in my teaching at some stage. And in fact, if you're not sure what all those students are sniffing their papers for, that's what you call spirit duplicating. When you wound that through the machine, you used an alcohol base, and all the kids used to go, ah. So, the idea is we're not concentrating on the technology. If we have a think of current technologies, and we think of YouTube, we think of Netflix, we think of smartphones, Facebook, LinkedIn, all of those different current technologies. If we spend too much time concentrating on the technology, then we don't really cover off on the main concept. I wanted you to have a think about this. If we go back, our current preps, if you think about it, will have 13 years ahead of them in terms of their formal education. So that our current preps will be finishing year 12 in 2032. I want you to think about what was technology like 13 years ago. Good question. It was very different. In fact, less than 13 years ago, there were no Android phones. There were no iPads. Series 1 wasn't released until 2010. There was no iPhone. There was no Google Drive. The hashtag wasn't invented. And Twitter was unavailable. In the 13 years going backwards, we haven't got a sense of... The designers of this curriculum didn't want to make it that we need to keep up with technology. We want to keep up with thinking. And that's the very important thing to consider. We want to keep kids thinking about things. And that's the crux of the curriculum.
Yeah, we also then want to make sure that we're honouring the curriculum as well. So when you are, and especially when you've got teachers that might be doing more of that ICT, always make sure and get them to mark against the curriculum. Think about and ask them, what content descriptions are you aiming to address? Especially if you've still got those teachers who think that typing or creating a PowerPoint slide is the digital technologies curriculum. Make sure that you are always thinking about honouring the curriculum. And if you're someone who is quite overwhelmed in this space, take a breather and certainly relax, because you're not alone in this space. But our recommendation would be to start unplugged. Start off really small and then build your own knowledge as well. And think about how you can adapt the digital technologies curriculum into little areas and little lessons that you already might be teaching, especially when it comes to that data part as well, that you may not realise that you're already teaching the digital technologies curriculum. Well, that's all we have with our final thoughts. And before we leave off, I just want to say that all of the resources that we have spoken about today are available in a resource folder for you within this webinar. So anything that Daryl or myself has spoken about, it's all there. Now, for me, any of the resources that I spoke about can be all available via the community of practice that we have for ACS. It is free to join, free to access, and free to download all the resources that we spoke about. Within the community of practice, I'm going to create a dedicated forum for you that will be called Webinar for the Digital Technologies Curriculum Primary. There we will have the slides that we've shown and any of the resources that we also have spoken about today as well, just so it's easy for you to access them. Now, if you'd like to connect with me and kind of thought, ooh, that cubit and that shake table was pretty cool, I want to know more, get in contact with me. We have those banks of robotics and we are looking for schools to always borrow them as well. And the resource centre that we have as well, of all of those resources that we spoke about today that are specifically made by ACS, will be found within the resource centre within the community of practice. Before we finish up, I just want to say, Daryl, thank you so much for having us today. Thank you so much for coming along today. I certainly appreciate all your insights. And just like I would say the same thing, that you've provided me with a wealth of knowledge with the digital technologies curriculum and certainly provided a lot of resources to help teachers come off. So we certainly thank you for your help today. Does anyone have any questions? How can we get the teachers, the parents involved in digital technologies? That's a really good one. Daryl, have you had any experience with that being an assistant principal?
Yes, it's a short 5 minutes to discuss it, unfortunately. But look, it's important from from the outset to have the parents on board. The school council I found was, I know that in different states they have different governance systems, but certainly the school council was one where I spent a fair bit of time talking with, making sure that they were understanding what it is that we were on about. I found also a lot of our staff were parents as well, so it was important to get the staff on board. They could also, in fact, the staff are, in fact, the people to begin with in a lot of this parent stuff. You've got to really have your teachers on board, because they're the ones that are talking to the parents at the door when the kids are leaving, at the door when the kids are coming in. Once the staff have got a really good understanding of what needs to be done, that's a great one. Look, we've done parent sessions, we've done newsletter drops, we've done all those sorts of ways of communicating with parents. We've had parents playing with technology evenings, demonstration of students, lots of different ways to get them on board. I think the more hands-on you can make it with the parents, the better as well. So a robotics session with your parents would be absolutely fantastic. So borrow something from Catherine, set it up, bring the parents along. Even if you only get 10, I mean, we struggle to get a lot of people, even though we've got well over 1,000 students. Sometimes we thought it would be a good night if we got 20 parents along. You've got to start, you've got to keep banging away at it. And I think with the digital technologies, they get it. They understand very, very clearly that we need to make sure that our kids are up with the latest and have got some good thinking skills.
Yeah, something that I actually started before I left teaching at a school was I actually started up a YouTube channel for our parents. And so one thing that I found that was the biggest blocker of parents not coming to any of our information nights is that they may have struggled to find a babysitter, or they just couldn't commit to being physically in the school. And so we then started putting up a range of information sessions for them that we actually videotaped the information. So it went from only having a couple of people physically there to broadening the wider audience and our network just by having that same amount of information but presented through a video as well. So that was, if you are confident in doing your own videos, it certainly was a great way to attract more understanding with parents as well. Any other questions that have come through? Seem to be very quiet.
Just going to say, Catherine, I was just going to say, if you really wanted to hone up your video skills, a terrific little free app is called Adobe Spark. Very, very easy to use, and it'll get you to be a fantastic director and filmmaker within 4 minutes, guaranteed.
Absolutely. I've used that one as well before. It is very simple to use. That's all we have time for today. Thank you so much for connecting with us today. And again, thank you so much, Daryl, for participating in and sharing your insights. Now, don't forget that this series continues as well. So next week on the 3rd of June, I'm actually going to be focusing on the digital technologies curriculum for our secondary school teachers. So if you know anyone who is a secondary school teacher, bring them along. They will love it. The following webinar after that, webinar number 6, is we're going to dive in and look at how to create a scope and sequence. So you may actually finding a little bit of trouble or just getting your head around that where to start point as well. So much information is out there. And again, thank you so much for attending and being part of our virtual development series.